podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Bit of an animal, Monday, the 12th of January, 2026. Lots to get into. Fresh panel. Welcome back, Thembinkosi, as you take a slug of water. Welcome back, Jean.
How's it?
And a fresh welcome to Paul, who's subbing in for Lisa B. Finally got a Stormers supporter. So many, 50,000 people fill the stadium, but it was so difficult to get one of them to appear on the podcast. Welcome, Paul.
Hey guys, yeah, finally we have representation.
Yeah. Lisa B had to step away for work reasons quite a few weeks ago. So shout out to her and shout out to Sibusiso, who will be back next week, the other Lions supporter. And speaking of Lions, we're going to get stuck into it. We're going to start with the Lions victory. The Lions, the only South African team who actually won this week, as they defeated Lyon at Ellis Park. Thembinkosi, this victory was on the back of an excellent performance from Batho Hlakani, who was initially scheduled to play off the bench. Man of the match performance for him, many a carry, many a distance. You must be super stoked at getting a Sharks player.
I'm happy. Finally it's in reverse. We're getting players from the other unions instead of you guys taking from us. It's good, but I'm sure the Sharks are just telling him, you know what, go practice there. When you are done and fit and ready, we'll take you back. So pretty much that's going to go. But yeah, I'm happy about the match. It was a really convincing game, in terms of, especially coming back from last week where they actually won. And this is the second week where it's like a follow-up performance. So I'm actually proud of them. To be honest, I'm more impressed with who's this? Hlakani and Renzu. It seems like having them as our both flanks, they are really active. So they actually cover up, when the Lions normally take the ball, run in with the ball, and they normally get trapped. Hlakani and Renzu were able to cover that up, and also Brian Mills and Konia. I liked how they were able to make sure that the breakdown is secure, and that kept the Lions having that ongoing offloads and flows. So yeah, I'm very stoked. I'm very proud of the boys. My only complaint would be I would have liked to see Hashin Pete more. I'm not sure what we should do with Hashin Pete. Maybe put him on a wing, have a Grant Williams type of situation where he sometimes plays wing, then scrum off. But I know that we can't take Van der Beek out. It's not going to work. We need Van der Beek and somehow Hashin Pete. Maybe put him, sorry, Angela Davis, but maybe put him on the wing. But so yeah, I'm really happy.
Yeah, so this is the first victory for the Lions in the Challenge Cup. They lost the first two games. They play away to Perpignan next week, but it's a solid performance. Had most of their players. Jean, at least one team won in Gauteng this weekend. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the Lions played they played really well and they played to their strengths. We spoke about Batho Hlakani when the under-20 World Champs was underway, and he's been making a name since then. Devastating ball carrier, also good on defense. He's a good tackler. One thing I like about him on defense is he's got this ability to get really low and really soak up. So when you're tackling when you're tackling a big runner, a big strong runner, he's got that ability to really set low, take the impact, and sort of kill that person's momentum. But yeah, I think the Lions are starting to figure out what some of the other teams have figured out, that your bench really does play a role. Having I know Batho Hlakani obviously was supposed to come off the bench but didn't. But yeah, guys like Hashim Peed and those guys coming off the bench, bringing in your youngsters towards the end of the game, that can be really devastating for opposition who are starting to feel the altitude. And I think it's something maybe us over in Pretoria need to start taking a look at, is maybe using similar tactics.
Yeah, Lyon rotated quite heavily, but still a good performance from the Lions. The guy that Batho Hlakani actually replaced in the starting lineup, Siba Koma, is a pretty good player himself. Quite a large and mobile blindside flank. Can play lock at a pinch if need be. The other team in the Challenge Cup representing South Africa were the Cheetahs, and they were supposed to play at Amsterdam. The game was sold out, 5,000 tickets, but unfortunately, because of the weather, the game had to be cancelled. And the rules are pretty clear that the home team has to ensure that the game actually can go forward. They did try and play it at a different venue behind closed doors, but the referee and the officials did not clear the pitch. The Cheetahs are playing again this weekend, and this game probably will go ahead against Racing 92 in France. Racing likely to field a sort of a rotated squad. Now we move on to the Champions Cup, where the Stormers, playing their 12th game of the season, unfortunately came undone with a much changed team. They did have a few first choice players in there at Damian at 12, Ben Jason Dixon starting at blindside flank. Paul, your thoughts on your first loss of the season, but still a relatively promising performance considering how many debutants you had.
Yeah, I knew the first loss would be coming at some point, so rather now than later in the competition. But I just feel that the guys that they fielded, they could have done better. I just feel like Dobson in his post-match said he expected more. So I just feel like if they stuck to the core Stormers principles, we could have at least held them. The breakdown issue was a big issue for us. I don't know. It will be interesting to watch previous games if other teams challenged us as much at the breakdown as this game. But yeah, I was really disappointed with that. And also the kicking of 9. It wasn't working. So I don't know why we didn't revert to kicking of 10 and kicking more for field territory rather than contestables, because we were losing all the 50-50s. So yeah.
It's interesting, Devanaga, much of a veteran, also coached quite a bit in the Currie Cup this past Currie Cup season. He struggled a little under the conditions. Our colleague Hugh Griffin was there at the stadium, and he said the conditions were quite cold as well. Dobson sort of primed the performance at the end of the press conference concluding the Bulls victory at Cape Town Stadium, saying that rotation would be needed considering all the attrition of playing the Bulls and what our colleague Sibusiso described as a test match atmosphere, conditions and that. So they were going to rotate at some point. It was just I wouldn't say it was that bad necessarily, but the game got away from them. And the other thing is that Harlequins were really bad throughout the season. They played 9 games in the league. They lost 7, and the only 2 teams they beat were Newcastle Red Bull and Gloucestershire, who were below them in the league table. But then somehow, like, all the conditions sort of came together that Harlequins got some of their key players back from injury, and they put in quite a strong performance at the Stoop. They started really well. Your thoughts?
But I also feel like the combination of players we left out, we could have tinkered with a bit. I feel like Porthen could have played the Bulls game, and Ali Vermaak could have gone to the Harlequins game. It would have given us more structure, I feel. So just, small things like that, I feel like we could have gotten better. And the fact that Hudsenberg and Willemse played in the midfield, they haven't played there much, and especially together. So I just feel like we could have played a stronger center with either Willemse or Hudsenberg. But yeah,
I think Dobson alluded to the fact that they didn't want to rush Porthen back from that injury. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen Porthen earlier in the season. And then obviously it's a real loss to see Ali Vermaak get injured so soon against the Bulls. And then obviously Dobson talking about the fact that the pitch had a lot to do with that. Thembinkosi, the Stormers lose. Your thoughts?
My thoughts, finally. It was about to happen. But yeah, like I think I'm just gonna echo what Paul is saying. I think the midfield combination was a problem, especially because Haaland is not I am your last man of defense. So once we get past Damian Willemse in the midfield, you're kind of through. And there was a time where Damian Williamson was off, and I think it was who's this Clayton was
Clinton
on.
Swart, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you could see that there's like a gap. Like I'm not sure what's going on at the Stormers, but that backline that played has no defensive power. I think, and that's what was costing them like the whole match. Like you could see that Damian Williamson was the one forced to be defending and attacking, doing both roles, and it kind of didn't add up at the end. And I feel like maybe had they had a stronger, maybe a more consistent, what is the center, they could have dealt better with most of what was going on. But yeah, happy for the loss. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah. You're happy to see. I'm kind of rooting for the Stormers to an extent because I do reside in the city of Cape Town, but yeah, they're really flying the flag for South Africa. All right, we move right along to the highest scoring game of the week. The Bulls hosted Bristol Bears at Loftus Versfeld. Jean, we'll go to you. Bristol started like a house on fire, but then they were huffing and puffing. You didn't quite get the game over the line though.
Yeah, I think everyone's upset because the Bulls conceded close to 61 points at home, and then people forget that they also scored 50 points, just 1 point away from 50. And I know there's all this talk of Fortress Loftus and whatnot. But actually, if you dive into the stats, it's actually quite interesting to see. It really is a game of two tales. And I think much like many test matches this year, if you go and watch it again, you'll see a different story. Um, and I'll just throw some stats out here. Kicking success for the Bulls, 100% versus 89, um, compared to Bristol. Um, some other interesting stats: the Bulls made 781 meters compared to 562 for Bristol. They had 34 more carries, equal amount of clean breaks, more defenders beaten, 13 more offloads, almost 40 more passes, close to 10% more possession. And then the damaging stat is the fact that they only had 48% of the territory. And that sort of tells you that all that work, all that effort didn't gain them anything. And I think, much like the commentator said in the Stormers versus Harlequins game, Harlequins were lucky in that they clicked in that match. It all came together for Harlequins in that match. And I think it's going to be the same with the Bulls. Um, I think it's going to be really interesting once we're past the break, once we're past the Six Nations break. It's going to be really interesting because Ackerman will then have had the full rotation of Springbok coaches who'd have come in, looked at his system, offered him tweaks, and he will then have had a good 2 3 weeks of solid time with the players to embed the systems because the the Bulls were attacking like they were attacking 7 tries. The Bulls are not exactly known for 7 tries unless the opposite team is fielding a C team. There's wheels on that Bulls team, and there were moments where I was thinking like, wow, is Ackerman looking at the Stormers game plan and sort of stealing from them? I think things that let us down, the nines weren't fast enough. I don't blame this loss at all on Leroux, even though he did lose his head and made a silly error there. Um, but him and Pollard, I feel they actually unlocked that Bulls backline and they got them moving and the ball shipped out wide quite effectively. So the basics are there, the attack is there. But those first 10 minutes, letting 3 tries just slip in, they really need a defensive plan. And this is something we've been saying from the Bulls since Jake White's days, is that there is no defensive plan. The defensive plan for the Bulls is we'll tackle until they get tired. The problem is you're the one who gets tired first. And I think that is Ackerman's biggest headache right now is the fact that they don't have a defensive plan. And even when it comes to turnovers, this was a poor game for the Bulls who used to have who's Vlakvark van der Merwe. He usually gets 2, 3 turnovers a game. I think he only got one. So yeah, Bristol, I think Bristol knew the wheels were going to come off last 15 minutes in each half, and they said, listen, when we take to the field, it's 120% until we die, and then we're just holding on. So I think that was all in all their game plan, and it paid off for them.
Yeah, interestingly, if we're speaking of wheels, it's been confirmed that the Bulls have obviously left because their next game is away against Section Pau in France, and then they play a URC game against Edinburgh in Scotland, and then they come immediately back to Cape Town. So it's Cape Town to South Africa, and then they play Thembinkosi Lions at Ellis Park. So the big news from the traveling squad from the Bulls is that Caden Moodley, Cedric Arendse and Tristan Joster are all on the plane for that tour. So that's a significant portion of the speed from the Bulls. Paul, your thoughts on the Bulls season thus far?
The Bull season, I feel like you said, it's just a defense that's been letting them down, but that's been coming since last season. It's not something new. Like the attack is good, but they are lacking that defense. So they, unlike the Stormers game, they actually put up a fight, but letting in that first three tries, once you're chasing the game, it's always, much harder. So if you within one score with like 20 minutes in the first half, then you still always have a fight. But letting in three tries, there's no way you're going to make it back.
Thembinkosi, you play the Bulls not too long from now. What are you seeing in this team?
The lack of defense. I don't know. To be honest, when I look at them, they're playing really well. When I'm saying that in terms of attack, you can see the shapes they're trying to do, the new system that are tried. But I don't know how they're gonna really sort out their whole defensive mode. It felt like a Super Rugby match where you score, I score, you score, like, and if you're close to like the 5 meter line, you know what, we'll just move aside so you can score. It felt like that. So I'm not sure what they need to do with their defense, but in terms of everything else, they have the players, they have I don't know. I don't know. It seems like they have everything in place for them to be playing this poorly. So
But with the new attack, you don't think it's
Mm.
maybe one too many offload, you know?
I think at times, I think that's a valid argument. Is that and there were a couple of times where you could see the players were almost hesitant, like the offload was on, but then they'd rather carry the ball to the ground. I think this is a case of similar to the Springboks when Rassie came in. The guys are scared to commit because they're thinking I'll be intercepted. I'll be if I offload the ball's gonna, and I think the guys just need to commit to it and not hang on to, because that half a second that you're hanging on to the ball before you offload is where the defender occupies that space. So again, I think it's a commitment thing, and it's once it starts clicking, it's going to be devastating. Because if you look at what Bristol did, Bristol didn't offload at all because they knew the Bulls would be swimming in to prevent offloads. But what they would do is they would carry straight from the ground, and something that the Bulls didn't do, which really cost them, was they didn't set pillar defenders. So they didn't set an A and a B defender. So if the ruck is in the middle, you've got A and you've got B. For the Springboks, this is typically the prop and either one of the locks or one of the other props. And they're supposed to prevent that pick and go straight over the ruck straight. And Bristol just exploited that ruthlessly, sending in their biggest carriers straight from the ground, another 2 meters, another 2 meters, and then the defense starts collapsing in. And now you've got backs defending forwards because it's just one forward going the whole time, and the other eight are just stacking behind, waiting their turn. So you've got two defenders on the ground, and you're losing two defenders, but they're only losing one attacker. So I think the ruck defense definitely. But yeah, as far as the offloads goes, they're not typical. It's not a Bulls thing. It's a Cape Town thing. It's a Joburg thing.
Lions.
Maybe even a Sharks thing. But I think the Bulls just need to commit to it, and then we'll start seeing it. There were times where they could force it when it wasn't on, but then again, it's that hesitancy gets into your head. Last time I didn't do it, we lost the ball. Should I? Shouldn't I? I'll Hail Mary it, and by then it's too late.
Now, the coaching staff also has to get that message across to the players that if they throw the offload and he gets intercepted, they won't be chastised for it. The other aspect, I've read a few articles this week saying that maybe the Bulls playing staff is more suited to the Jake White system, and then it's going to take them over time to more grind you out. It's going to take them time to adapt to what we've seen from Ackerman under the Lions when they made 2 Super Rugby finals. Yeah, and then shout out to Tom Jordan. This is good at advertised. God damn, that guy's good.
Yeah.
Is like I said, he's Timu Damian Willemse. All right, we move
He
right along
irritated
to
me.
the Sharks
His
sending a
face just
C/B
irritated me.
team with a smattering of A players like Vincent Tutuka to to uh Sale. Somewhat disappointing that we didn't see an A Sale Sharks team versus an A Natal Sharks team. Could have been cool, the Jaws Derby or Shark Week as they call it. But unfortunately, the Sharks, like the Stormers, sort of rotated the team. So yeah, overall, Sharks dropped this game. Somewhat disappointed, but now we're really gonna like pack the team. If anybody's seen the social media, the Sharks are playing a very strong team against Clermont this week. Clermont who have got nothing to play for because they lost to Glasgow. Yeah, players that might have stood out though. Vincent Tutuka played well off the bench. It was nice to see Emil van Heerden and Corneral start at lock. Those two are our main locks. Also, our main young locks coming through the system, although might not want so many penalties from Corneral. Paul, Sharks are playing Stormers at Cape Town Stadium in 2 weeks' time. Your thoughts on this performance?
Well, I actually didn't catch the Sharks game, to be honest. But yeah, the Sharks, they're always a difficult team and a threat. So, especially with all the main guys back for the Stormers game, it's going to be a tight game. And, just like the Harlequins game, it's going to be a much different game from the Stormers as well. So, I think it's going to be a lot tighter, much like the Bull Stormers, but not as tight. But yeah, it's going to be a close one.
Paul, your thoughts on Dobson speaking about the pitch, especially after the Monster Truck event at Cape Town Stadium recently. You've had a chance, obviously, to attend Cape Town Stadium games more often. Does the pitch look less spongy, less sort of absorbent to you when you physically see it in person?
Well, like overhead pictures I've seen of the pitch, like the captain's run and everything, you can see the divots, you can see where they laid the new turf and things. So it's definitely, it wasn't up to scratch at all. As from the stands, we didn't really see that much, or I couldn't really see that it was the field affecting the game. But yeah, like I said, from overhead shots, you could see the field wasn't where it should be.
Yeah. Just back to the Sharks game quickly. There were a lot of former Natal Sharks players in the team. So shout out to Jacques van Meulen, Hiren Andrews. I think I know somebody who's related to Hiren Andrews, by the way. And then Gershon Weir on loan from the Griquas at the Sale Sharks. A guy who played one game. He played round one, came on for like 2 minutes for Natal Sharks last season against Connacht and Galway. Yeah, so the amount of Griquas players spread across different teams is quite significant because Sebo Glamini is playing out for the Dragons in Wales. Dylan Mart's playing reasonably well for the Stormers. Gershon Weir's at Sale. And yeah, maybe guys like Caleb Abrams and Connor Mahoney might get opportunities later on. Connor Mahoney, by the way, who's got a connection to the Hopefield Rugby Club. So shout out to the Hopefield Rugby Club. I know a few people there. Shout out to Tazwell. Yeah, Tazwell. So yeah, everybody on the West Coast, the Borland top 12 tournament. All right, guys, we move on to previewing this coming week's fixtures. If I can get this thing up. We're starting on Friday night at 10 p.m. Section Power versus Bulls in France. The Bulls already on the plane. Let's not say predictions, Jean. Your early thoughts on the game. It is Monday.
I think this one might be one where the Bulls grind out a win. Um, it won't be pretty though. Like I'll be honest, I'm not expecting it to be pretty. It might be another free-flowing affair, but I do think it's the Bulls are we're gonna start seeing the upward trajectory, but very little bits. Like it's not gonna go. It's gonna be very slow in the beginning. Don't expect a Boeing, expect a Cessna. So we're just gonna get off the ground. We'll get a win. I think if we can follow up that win with a decent performance against our red neighbors in Joburg, then yeah, and not the red neighbors against Edinburgh. Although touring is not a Bull's strength, then it would be good. But if at least before the Six Nations break we can get 2 wins out of the next 3 matches, I think then we'll start seeing the confidence and the belief come from the player side. Um, yeah, I don't expect I don't expect much from Section Palawas. They haven't really featured in the Heineken or the Champions Cup all that much. And there's not really they don't have any impressive performances to list. That said, um, this early with no teams being listed, it's difficult to put it in. But I've got a feeling the Bulls will grind it out. I'd say by anywhere between 3 and 7 points for the
Yeah.
Bulls.
Of the three exciting backline players that we mentioned earlier that are back in the team from injury, would you inject? Which ones would you draft back into the team?
Curtly Arendse definitely on wing. If Pollard wants to pull those kicks close into the goal line, you need Curtly Arendse. He's deadly under the cross kick. And definitely Kane Moody. One thing where the Bulls really suffered against the Bears was for all the speed that he brings, Seb de Klerk just doesn't have the height to be competing. Where Kane Moody can really go up because he's a tall guy. He can when he's jumping, it's very difficult to compete against him for the high ball. So Kane Moody and Kurtley Arendse definitely. They will be game changers for the high ball, and then start chasing the nines around so that they get to the rucks just half a second faster and ship the ball half a second faster because that's where it's killing us.
Okay. Next game is Sharks in Durban versus Claremont. As we've seen on the social media from the Sharks, everybody's who's gotten a break last week is back, including Siya Kolisi, Oxenchair. We'll probably see Grant Williams starting. Apelele Fassi, some videos of him taking kicks and stuff like that. So, yeah, I expect a victory, and then we'll see where it goes from there. If we sneak into the fourth place in our group, we'll probably lose in a way quarterfinal or last 16, but at least it will be experience for the team. So we'll see how things pan out for them. So that game starts at 3 p.m. in Durban, but at least the crowd will get a exciting game. The next game on the list for the Champions Cup, that is at Cape Town Stadium, same day, Saturday, but at the 5:15 p.m. kickoff. Paul, will you be there? And what are you expecting from the game against Leicester Tigers? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be there. I'm expecting a much tougher game actually than what we had against Harlequins, not in terms of the amount of tries or defensive lapses, but just the grunt that they'll bring. So it'll be a tougher game, but we'll have all our first team choices back, so that will even out. I think it'll be won and lost in the air, depending on the kicks, if we're going for contestables or territory. Yeah, so I think that is where it's going to be won and lost.
Interesting. All right, now we move on to the Challenge Cup. On Saturday at 7:30 p.m. in the evening, Perpignan versus Lions. So Thembinkosi, the Lions lost to 1-1. Do you think they should go for it with the first team and try and sneak into the playoffs and send a solid team to France?
Why not? I think at this point they should just go for it. Um, I don't think that they at this point can be be picky about what tournament that they can most likely win. I think it's more of do your best in all of them and hope for the best instead of saying that it would be, it sounds ridiculous, but it would be really ridiculous for the Lions to say, no, let's not send our A team to Perpignan because we want to focus more on the URC. I rather have them go for both and see what happens than for them to focus all their eggs in one basket. But depending, most likely, I'm hoping for a win, but deep down tells me that that's not likely, given how the Lions generally are on tour. So I'm not expecting a win. I'm waiting for it. Yeah.
No,
Go ahead, John.
I actually have a question for Thembinkosi and for anyone who I'm wondering if the Lions aren't more likely to win the Challenge Cup than they are the URC.
I
Yeah,
think
that's likely. But yeah, they only have so many players, I guess. So it's up to them to decide which where they want to put the eggs in which basket.
my problem with that is that it comes down to whoever is going to be fifth on the Champions Cup. Can can the Lions beat like I'm not sure who's in the fifth row for all the groups, but can the Lions
Mm.
beat like a Bath in a final or in a semi-final? I don't think so. I think they can try, but once those Champions Cup teams come down to the Challengers Cup, I can see them winning a few, but not all of them.
Paul, you've seen the Lions play live at Cape Town Stadium. What are your thoughts on the game? Because they really ran the Stormers quite close in their encounter.
Yeah, like the Lions is a tricky one because, like I said in the start of the show, whenever they start getting momentum, they're either bleeding players to other unions or coaches. But yeah, in the Stormers game, they gave us a run because they had a quick start. They always quick to the ruck. Before you can set your defensive line, they're already on you. So their brand is very good. It's just whether they have the players to sustain it through full season. So that, yeah, for me, that's the Lions' biggest problem.
Hmm. Okay, so the final
So,
game from South
so
African's
essentially,
perspective, you want to get in there, Thembinkosi?
yeah, I just wanted to add, like, essentially they're like a first team, meaning that from 1 to 15 they have the best players, but once one of those 15s is not there, it kind of drops.
Yeah. Look, they do have some depth in certain positions, and all the teams have. I think having Krappies, Mone van der Berg starting, Nico Steyn as a backup as well as Hashimpede. Yeah, and I'm for the idea of maybe putting Hashimpede on the wing that could give him a bit more game time. I know Sibusiso, other Lions correspondent, is eager for Hashimpede to play as much as possible. Yeah, we've got three Lions correspondents so far on the podcast. Yourself, Thembinkosi, Sibusiso, and Jan de Koning. Shout out to Jan de Koning. So yeah, very much Lions representation on the podcast. But yeah, we'll see how things pan out. It's just unfortunately they do lose players at key moments, but if their recruitment's a bit more solid and they can keep people longer term. Obviously, they lost a really good player in Sandile Nohamba to a large contract in Japan, which you just can't help. And I was obviously quite disappointed when Nohamba left the Sharks for the Lions to get more game time because at the time we had Grant Williams and Jaden Hendrickson. Jaden Hendrickson was actually in form at the time. So I was disappointed when Nohamba left, but I was obviously understanding of the situation. I don't want a talented player such as that to languish on the bench. Interesting news as we close off the podcast that obviously we know that there's four URC franchises, but there are 10 other unions within the South African structure, and the 10 other unions generally play in what's called the SA Cup. And back in the day in the Super Rugby, you used to have like a reserve league. It used to be known as the Vodacom League, and then something else, and then it was the DSTV Challenge at a certain point. But there is, and I shared the article on the podcast chat group. There's talk of wanting the URC unions to then add to the other 10 unions and actually compete in the SA Cup. Which to me should be a positive thing. It gives you like your third, fourth choice players in positions like hooker and prop opportunity to get more competitive game time outside of club rugby. Your thoughts on this, John?
I think I don't know. I'm in two minds. On the one side, I feel like it's going to be good. I feel like there's potential there to strengthen the development, to grow bigger squads, especially with us competing in the European competitions. But then on the other side, I also feel like, is this gonna? It depends on how the big unions come to the table. If the Bulls field their URC and their Challenge Cup team in the Vodacom Cup, they're gonna steamroll everyone and just collect a trophy. So I don't know. It sort of depends on the spirit of the competition, if you want to call it that. Um, I do feel that it's going to give a lot of fringe players a platform. If you put in a good performance, and I mean, how many guys have we seen this season go from Griquas to Stormers or to other teams? And I personally think George Whitehead the Sharks should be calling his phone nonstop and asking him to come back. He was a cool and calm head for them. So I think that there's good can come of it if we run it right. And if the spirit of the competition is to say, listen, this is not about showing us how strong you are. This is about showing us the talent you have. Then I think it would be a big net positive overall. And I think an idea, because I know we spoke about it and we said we had a chat on the group about relegation and things like that. But another thought popped up is, why don't we why isn't there a thing to say that the clubs featuring in the Vodacom Cup and the Currie Cup, those guys get divided in and they feed to the big four unions for the URC and for in sort of a, how can you say, like a draft. So the top team gets to pick which union they want to feed their talent to, or something like that. I just think that there needs to be some sort of reward also for the smaller unions in this.
Yeah, they have to formalize it because for years, the Stormers would get players, would get first refusal of players from Boland, from Western Province, and to a less District Eagles in George, although they seem to be building somewhat of a formidable team under Heineke Meyer now. They recently persuaded Fred Seilinger to come out of retirement. He's quite a good fly off. Not the biggest guy, but quite skillful. So yeah, we'll see how this pans out in the long term. URC teams obviously can't field a URC and maybe even a second URC team during the tournament because in the SA Cup, because they're still playing URC. But yeah, we used to have guys in the Vodacom Cup stay sharp during Super Rugby time so that they wouldn't come in so much from the cold. Another aspect of news that came through this week was that Griquas were loaning Dylan Mart to the Stormers, and there's some talk there about back and forth between Griquas coach and Dobson in the media about sort of like when Dylan Mart's scheduled to come back and if the Stormers made any offer yet to keep him. But Griquas did sign much heralded Damian Markus, inside center and outside center, who spent last season in Japan, played 5 games, but then got injured, and then had a relatively good Currie Cup for Western Province when they played a very youthful team. So I think it's a positive for such a young player to get some game time. Paul, you support Stormers Western Province. What are your thoughts on Damian Markus signing for Griquas, and will he just develop there and come back in a few years' time?
Yeah, no, yeah, that is a good talent. And like you with Hashim Peed also said, these young guys need game time. So I feel it is mutually beneficial, especially if we have plans on bringing him back. So yeah, it's always a good thing. But one thing I just wanted to say with letting the bigger unions compete with the smaller ones, if they have like some type of quota system where it's mostly under 21s and you can only let your senior players coming back from injury take part, but senior Springboks and things aren't allowed to take part, then I think it can work. But like you said, it's all the technicalities that they need to work out.
Yeah, So it's not sort of an uncompetitive landscape. And also, the unions are going to have to be careful not to fall into a situation that we saw somewhat in the Currie Cup, where like young front rowers were exposed to like grizzled veterans from the Pumas, and they got really like eaten alive at the scrum. Thembinkosi, your thoughts on all these discussion points?
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask a question to everyone. Like, I'm more curious to see because the beginning of the SA Cup kind of overlaps with the end of year of the Challengers Cup, URC, and all of those games. So my
Mhm.
question is, how are they going to schedule the games? Because it's going to be interesting that the Bulls need to play a URC team at Loftus, and now they're also playing in the SA Cup. Are they going to use a different stadium? Are they going to make sure that all the calendars don't clash? I feel like there's a lot of question marks from me than answers now that I think about it. But in terms of how I feel about them playing there, I think it will increase the competition's stature
Mm.
because all the big four fans can now actually focus on the SA Cup because not a lot of really people actually take the SA Cup into consideration. So it's going to be interesting to see how they actually balance the whole schedule out. But yeah, I think it will increase the value of the SA Cup. And like you guys have been mentioning, the more players get game time, the better they're gonna be. And I think it will also help the smaller nations, I mean the smaller unions, because now they go from having just 9 games to having like what now it's gonna be plus minus 14 or 13 games. So they have
Mm.
more game time than like the Bulls and all the other ones have already been having a lot of game time. But it gets them to have like a more challenging competition than
Yeah, but that's
for
also more
just
home games and revenue.
Mm.
yeah. And sponsors, they can I feel like they need to South Africa needs to polish the Kerry Cup and the SA Cup. They need to make more people invested in that because I feel like if we can get that as like a commercial product,
Mm.
imagine we have like the URC as a commercial product bringing in money, we have the Kerry Cup bringing in money, and the SA Cup bringing in money. It's like 3 tournaments.
Mm.
I
So
think the
if it's well done, yes.
yeah, I think the value there for me with the Vodacom Cup or the SA Cup and the Currie Cup is, and until we reach the knockout stages, let's avoid the stadiums. Let's avoid stadiums. Take it to the community, right? Take it to smaller stadiums. There's plenty of high school fields. Pretoria's got Affies, Garsfontein, Hoërskool Swartkop. There's plenty of places where the local community would turn out and flood the field to watch it. And there you've got guys who are potentially playing on their high school grounds or rubbing shoulders with younger kids. Younger kids get that first-hand exposure. They're getting involved. I think if again, and this is if the spirit of the competition is right, and we base it around community rugby, not franchise rugby, not filling up stadiums, because you're never going to fill Loftus with 50,000 seats for a Currie Cup game. Not with Super Sport out there and all the ways to watch it. If you take it to the community and you play the games there, I think then you'll get the buy-in that you're looking for. You'll get the community involved, and it becomes a different kind of product. It becomes you're selling an emotion, a feeling, a vibe. You're not selling watch rugby because watch rugby, well, I can watch rugby the whole year round. When we're on a break, Super Rugby is on. When Super Rugby is on a break, we're on. There's always rugby in Europe. Understand? So I wouldn't say the way to approach this is to say watch more rugby. I would say come out and be part of the community, the rugby community in your area. You don't need to drive to Loftus. You don't need to worry about anything. Go to a high school. You get to watch the Stormers best under 21 players run out against the Griquas best under 21 players. And then you get that vibe and you get that going. I think that would be a very good way to approach it and market it to the community to step away from the stadiums because otherwise we're just looking at empty stadiums again.
Yeah, absolutely. The Currie Cup did do a little of that this past season, but they could do a lot more. In Cape Town, the City Park in Athlone. There is NNK Stadium in Paarl North. There is they could play a game in Belhar. They definitely sell it out. If they play Currie Cup games, if they played SA Cup games as well within the community, I'd I'd absolutely be okay with it. Why that over maybe even using the game as a sort of a curtain raiser to a URC game.
Mm.
All right, guys, we've run out of time. That is the show for this evening. Thembinkosi has got one more thing to say. He just raised his
Yeah,
hand.
I just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was thinking, wouldn't it make much more sense if we take the games to like where like your universities, because they should have the
Mm.
infrastructure for recording because they're
Yeah.
already playing in like a varsity cup. I think it would
Yeah.
make much more sense for like the Lions
Mm.
to use Wits or UJ as like their home
Mm.
ground, depending on uh whichever one they feel like is better. I think that
Mm.
would be much more like make it like John is right, like make it more tribal or territorial. I think
Mm.
that will get more people involved.
Yeah, because I mean the Sharks took the two games, home games, instead of putting it at Kings Park. The one was within the city of Durban municipality, but the sort of more northern side, and then the other one was in Pietermaritzburg. Reasonably well attended, and Sharks won one game, lost one game, but the Sharks, like Western Province Stormers, were also using the Currie Cup more to blood the up and coming players, whereas like they had very few people in preseason because they were all with the Springboks. So yeah, I mean, uh, Western Province could use CPUT's Bellville campus. That's a notoriously poorly run university, but they have a nice rugby facility, and I know the people who run the rugby club, so they're at least competent. But
Yeah.
yeah, shots fired. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the show. Like, subscribe, click the notification bell, rate us on any audio formats. Thank you to Thembinkosi, Jean, and Paul. And until next week, as we always say, in Rasi, we trust.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.